Hello students and welcome back to English Literature a Click Away. We are going to look at another one of John Donne's poem, Canonization. Now in the last video we have seen that John Donne is also known as father of metaphysical poetry. And why so? I have shared the link in the description box about the video, and it has details about the metaphysical poetry, its features, and also John Donne's bio. So you can go through that. Coming back to Canonization. This poem, Canonization, was published in 1633, and the poem shows Donne's wit and irony and how he considers his love towards his lover as equal to being saintly. And that is how the title of the poem, the Canonization, he considers his love to be as saintly that it is worthy of being canonized. Canonization is giving the title of saint to a person who does selfless service. So that is the parallel he draws between his love and canonization. Now let's look at the summary. The poem has been written in 5 stanzas, and in the poem, the poet is trying to convince people in different ways, giving them reasons to leave them alone and let them love, let the lovers just be. So the first stanza goes like this. For God's sake, hold your tongue and let me love, or chide my palsy or my gout, my 5 grey hairs or ruined fortune flout. With wealth your state, your mind with arts improve. Take you a course, get you a place, observe his honour or his grace, or the king's reel or his stampede face. Contemplate what you will approve, so you will let me love. Now in this stanza, the poet is trying to, now look at the first line. For God's sake, hold your tongue. Now he's so anguished, he's so angry with the people who have been trying to dissuade them from loving each other, dissuade the lovers from loving each other, that it can be seen in his first sentence itself. It is as if he's scolding them. For God's sake, hold your tongue. He's saying, please stop talking, please don't stop us, and let me love. Or chide my palsy. If you want to point out something bad about me, if you want to point a finger at something, point a finger at my palsy or my gout that I have, or the 5 grey hair that I have, or the ruined fortune that I have. So he's giving some other reasons for them to point finger at other than the love, his love for his lover. And then he says, or if you don't have anything else to do, with wealth your state. So he says, with wealth your state, your mind with arts improve. With the wealth that you have, the riches that you have, you improve your status. Or with the mind that you have, you can improve upon your arts. Take you a course, get you a place. Go get a course or get a place or something. And observe his honor or his grace. His is probably, he's talking about God, that you become a follower of faith, and or the king's reel or his stampede fair. And then he says that, or become a king's person and go praise him and contemplate and think about it. Go do something else so that you can let me love. So he's giving them umpty number of other reasons, other things that they can do, the people who have been dissuading the lovers from loving each other. The next stanza goes like this. Alas, alas, who's injured by my love? What merchant's ship have my sighs drowned? Who says my tears have overflowed his ground? When did my coals a forward spring remove? When did the heats which my veins fill add one more to the plaguy bill? Soldiers find wars and lawyers find out still, litigious men which quarrel move, though she and I do love. Now in the second stanza he's saying, why do you people don't want us lovers to love each other? What has my love done to you people or to the environment? Has it done any harm? Is it doing any harm to you? He says, alas, alas, who is injured by my love? Who? My love is not injuring anybody. It is not causing any harm to anyone. What merchant ships, if I sigh for my love in love, has it drowned any merchant ship? No, it hasn't. And who says my tears have overflowed his ground? Now these are all questions, like these are rhetoric sentences. He's asking the questions, but he is not expecting any answers because he knows that this has not happened. Who says my tears have overflowed his ground? If I cry in love, have my tears drowned somebody? Have they caused any floods? When did my cold, if I'm cold in love, has it caused any disruption to the spring? And when did if the heat of my love that fills my veins, has it caused plagueable, has it caused fever to anybody? And soldiers' job is to go on a war, lawyers is to find peace. And there are litigious men which quarrels move, there are people quarreling around, and what are me and my lover doing? They are not doing any harm to anyone. We are just being in love. That is what we do. Coming to the third stanza, now he says, call us what you will, we are made such, my love. You may give us whatever names you like, but we are made like that. And what we are is because of our love. Call her one, me another fly. It says you can call her a fly and I'm the other one. We are like flies that get attracted to the flame of love. He's talking about the moths, flies that get attracted to the flame of candles. So he's equating their love to the flame of the candle. He says, she is one fly and I'm another, and we are attracted to the flame of love. And we are tapers too, and at our own cost die. We are tapers. Tapers are candles. So he says, we are like candles and we are ready to melt in our love, in the heat of our love, at our own cost die. And we in us find the eagle and the dove. Now eagle and dove are opposite to each other. The eagle represents power and dove is supposed to be gentle. So he says although we are like opposites, one is eagle and another one is dove, but don't categorize us. We may have both the qualities. We are powerful as well as gentle. Then he talks about the phoenix riddle hath more wit by us. We two being one are it. He says the riddle of phoenix. Phoenix is a mythological bird that is said to be having both the sexes in the same body, and it is male as well as female. And also it is said that phoenix rises from the ashes. It burns down and it rises again from its ashes. So he says the riddle of phoenix, the myth of phoenix, cannot be explained better than by our love. He says we two are being one. We are the same body. We are like phoenix and we are neutral thing. Both the sexes are fitting in one body. We are like that. And we die and rise the same and prove mysterious by this love. So we die like the phoenix and we rise from our ashes. We rise from our love. Like we start and stop loving the same person again and again. The love remains the same. So we are dying and we are rising from the same ash. The fourth stanza goes like this. We can die by it, if not live by love. And if unfit for tombs and hearse, our legend be, it will be fit for verse. Now the poet is saying, if you think we are not worthy of living for this love, we can even die for it. If people think that our love is not worth living it, we can die for it. And if, even after death, we see that lovers create tombs and the hearse is a mobile that carries the dead body. If you find our love unfit for tombs and hearse, like it is not worthy even after dying, you may not think of building a tomb and carrying us in hearse, then let our legend be. Our love, it will live like a legend. It will be fit for verse, for words. And people will write about it. That is what he says. And if no piece of chronicle we prove, we'll build in sonnets pretty rooms. As well a well-wrought urn becomes, the greatest ashes as half-acre tombs. And by these hymns all shall approve, us canonized for love. Now here he's saying that if there's no piece of chronicle we prove, like if you don't find, even if you don't find our love worthy of any chronicle is a long piece of work, then we'll build in sonnets pretty rooms. We will live in sonnets. We will build in sonnets pretty rooms. We'll find place, pretty rooms. We'll find place in some sonnets. Our love will find some place in poems, if not in long stories. Then he says that, like, ashes, he talks about ashes. Ashes are the same for whether if it is of a wrought urn or for of a half-acre land or half-acre tomb. So he says you cannot compare the ash, that this ash is different, that ash. So as well as well-wrought urn becomes the greatest ashes as half-acre tombs. And by these hymns, he says we don't need big stories to live. Our love doesn't need big stories. Even hymns like religious verse will do. That will also suffice, and our love will live through that. Will live as religious verse, and we will approve, and our love will be canonized. Thus now here comes the word, the title of the poem, canonized, and thus our love will become saintly. Now in the last stanza he says, and thus invoke us, you whom reverent love made one another's hermitage. Now he says invoke. Whom do we invoke? We invoke the Almighty. We call upon them to bestow upon us their blessing. So now he's saying that we will become saintly, and thus we will be invoked. And this is how you people will address us. You people will say, you whom reverent love made one another's hermitage. He says people will look up to us and say, your love was pious, and your love is peace, not rage. The way you loved each other, that was peace. He's talking about when ages have passed, people will remember and invoke them and say that the love that you lovers had, it was peaceful, not like today's time, it is rage. And who did the whole world's soul contract and drove into the glasses of your eyes? And you have brought all the world's souls together. You have brought them together into the glasses of your eyes. So made such mirrors and such spies. Now all these lines he is assuming that people are invoking them and talking to them and addressing them. Them is the lovers, and people will say that your eyes are mirrors which are spies, and they will epitomize you. People are talking to the lovers' souls and saying that your eyes are mirrors and they epitomize others. The countries, towns, courts beg from above a pattern of your love. The legend of your love will cross the oceans, and it will go to other countries, and people of other countries, towns and courts beg from above. Even above, he's talking about even the Almighty, like the superpowers, that the pattern of your love will be not only people of the world, but even the heavenly bodies would like to follow the pattern of your love. And that is why our love would be canonized. So this is the poem by John Donne. It is a wonderful poem. We see the use of metaphysical poetry here a lot. The first title itself, canonization, like love is being compared to something saintly, as worthy to be canonized, called saint, like Saint Love or something like that. So metaphysical poetry also has a character of being in connection with the present ongoing situations, like merchants' ships. So we see the mention of ships here. See the sailings that were going on in that period, about 1600s, and plague. There's mention of plague here. Okay, the soldiers and lawyers. Now see, there is mention of lawyers also. So the people were learned. They were learning, finding different professions. So this is how John Donne expresses his love towards his lover, and tries to convince people to just let them be and love each other and mind their own business. In plain words, he He is just telling people to just mind their own business and just chill off like that. So in a poetic language though. So that is the gist of the poem and the summary of the poem. Hope you all liked it and understood it. If you have any doubts, please post them in the comment box. And please do like, share and subscribe.